Risk-based inspection, RBI, roles, responsibilities, training, and qualifications, defining essential skills and duties for risk management. Introduction to Section 7 of API RP 580, Team Approach, Team Members, Roles, and Responsibilities, including Team Leader, Inspection and Corrosion Specialists, Process and Operations Personnel, Maintenance and Management, Risk, Safety, Environmental, and Financial Roles, Training and Qualifications for RBI Application, and Keys for Success in RBI Team Performance. Section 7 of API Recommended Practice 580, 4th edition, August 2023, defines the human and organizational elements required for an effective risk-based inspection, RBI, program. While RBI is often perceived as a technical or analytical exercise, API RP 580 emphasizes that competent people, clearly defined roles, and structured teamwork are equally critical to achieving reliable and defensible risk decisions. This section establishes expectations for how organizations should form RBI teams, assign responsibilities, and ensure personnel are properly trained and qualified for their assigned functions. The intent of Section 7 is to ensure that RBI outcomes reflect a balanced and realistic understanding of likelihood and consequence of failure. This balance can only be achieved when input is provided by multiple disciplines, including inspection, corrosion, process engineering, operations, maintenance, safety, risk analysis, and management. Each discipline contributes unique insights into equipment condition, degradation mechanisms, operating context, and potential impacts of failure. Without this multidisciplinary approach, RBI studies may overlook critical risk drivers or apply overly conservative or optimistic assumptions. Section 7 is structured into 4 main parts: the team approach, 7.1, team members and their roles and responsibilities, 7.2, training and qualifications for RBI application, 7.3, and keys for success, 7. Together, these elements provide a framework for building an RBI team that is competent, accountable, and aligned with organizational objectives. The guidance applies to both qualitative and quantitative RBI methodologies and is scalable for different facility sizes and complexities. For management and practitioners, Section 7 serves as a benchmark for assessing whether an organization is adequately resourced to implement RBI. It reinforces that RBI credibility depends not only on tools and models, but on the knowledge, experience, and collaboration of the people applying them. This presentation summarizes these requirements and translates them into practical expectations for a professional RBI team. API RP 580 Section 7.1 establishes that RBI must be implemented using a team approach rather than by a single individual or discipline. The complexity of industrial assets, combined with the range of damage mechanisms and consequences involved, requires collaboration among personnel with diverse expertise. The team approach ensures that assumptions are challenged, knowledge gaps are identified, and risk estimates are based on a comprehensive understanding of the asset and its operating environment. A key principle of the team approach is multidisciplinary participation. Inspection personnel contribute knowledge of equipment condition and inspection effectiveness. Corrosion specialists identify damage mechanisms and predict degradation rates. Process specialists explain operating envelopes and deviations, and operations personnel provide practical insight into how equipment is actually used. Safety, environmental, and risk specialists ensure that consequences of failure are appropriately evaluated, while management provides direction, priorities, and resources. The team approach also improves consistency and transparency in RBI decisions. When risk rankings and inspection plans are developed collaboratively, the rationale behind decisions is better understood and more readily accepted by stakeholders. This reduces the likelihood of disputes during implementation and audits, and it strengthens confidence in the RBI program. API RP 580 recognizes that team composition may vary depending on the scope and complexity of the RBI study. Smaller or less complex systems may require fewer roles, while large or high-hazard facilities may require extensive specialist involvement. Regardless of size, the standard emphasizes that all necessary competencies must be represented and that communication among team members must be structured and effective. Ultimately, the team approach is foundational to achieving technically sound, defensible, and sustainable RBI outcomes. Section 7.2 of API RP 580 provides general guidance on defining team members, their roles, and their responsibilities within an RBI program. Clear role definition is essential to ensure accountability, avoid duplication of effort, and confirm that all aspects of risk are adequately addressed. Each team member is expected to contribute within their area of expertise while understanding how their input influences overall risk decisions. The standard emphasizes that roles should be based on competence rather than job titles alone. Personnel assigned to RBI activities must have the appropriate knowledge, skills, and experience relevant to their responsibilities. For example, an individual providing corrosion input must understand applicable damage mechanisms, while someone assessing consequences must be familiar with safety, environmental, and business impacts. Responsibilities typically include providing accurate data, participating in risk assessment discussions, reviewing assumptions, and supporting the development of inspection and mitigation plans. API RP 580 also highlights the importance of documenting roles and responsibilities as part of the RBI process. This documentation supports continuity, facilitates audits, and helps demonstrate compliance with internal and external requirements. Another important aspect is communication. Team members must be able to effectively communicate their findings and concerns to others, particularly when technical judgments affect risk rankings or inspection intervals. The general guidance in Section 7.2 sets the foundation for the more detailed role descriptions that follow, ensuring that the RBI team functions as a cohesive and competent unit rather than as isolated contributors. The team leader plays a central role in the successful execution of an RBI assessment, as described in API RP 580 Section 7.2.2. This individual is responsible for planning, coordinating, and facilitating the RBI process to ensure that it is conducted in a consistent, systematic, and effective manner. The team leader is often the primary point of accountability for the quality and integrity of the RBI study. Key responsibilities include defining the scope and objectives of the RBI assessment, assembling the appropriate team members, and ensuring that the selected RBI methodology is applied correctly. The team leader must manage meetings, guide technical discussions, and ensure that all relevant inputs are considered. This requires not only technical knowledge of RBI principles, but also strong leadership and communication skills. The team leader is also responsible for maintaining consistency in assumptions, risk ranking criteria, and documentation. This is particularly important when RBI is applied across multiple units or facilities. By enforcing standardized practices, the team leader helps ensure comparability of results and supports effective decision-making at the organizational level. API RP 580 emphasizes that the team leader should have sufficient RBI training and experience, as well as a broad understanding of inspection, corrosion, and risk concepts. While the team leader may not be the deepest technical expert in every discipline, they must be capable of integrating diverse inputs into a coherent risk picture and resolving disagreements in a structured and transparent manner. Inspection specialists and corrosion specialists provide critical technical input to the RBI process, as outlined in API RP 580 Sections 7.2.3 and 7.2.4. Their primary role is to assess the condition of equipment, identify applicable damage mechanisms, and evaluate the effectiveness of inspection methods in detecting and managing degradation. The inspection specialist contributes expertise in inspection techniques, non-destructive examination, NDE, methods, inspection coverage, and data quality. They help determine inspection effectiveness, identify inspection gaps, and assess confidence in existing inspection data. This input directly influences the likelihood of failure assessment within RBI. The corrosion specialist focuses on identifying active and potential damage mechanisms based on materials of construction, process conditions, and historical performance. They estimate corrosion rates, evaluate susceptibility to localized damage, and assess the impact of operating changes on degradation behavior. Their analysis is essential for predicting future damage and remaining life. API RP 580 stresses that these specialists must work closely together, as inspection data and corrosion modeling are interdependent. Both roles require strong technical competence and practical experience. Their combined input ensures that RBI assessments are grounded in realistic degradation behavior rather than generic assumptions, thereby improving the accuracy and credibility of risk evaluations. Process specialists and operations personnel provide essential context for RBI assessments, as described in API RP 580 sections 7.2.5 and 7.2.6. Their knowledge of how systems are designed, operated, and controlled is critical for understanding both the likelihood and consequences of failure. The process specialist contributes detailed information on process chemistry, operating conditions, design limits, and process deviations. This input is vital for identifying damage mechanisms, understanding upset scenarios, and evaluating how changes in operating conditions may affect degradation rates or failure consequences. Operations personnel offer practical, day-to-day insight into how equipment is actually used, including startups, shutdowns, abnormal operations, and operator responses. They often identify issues not captured in formal documentation, such as recurring operational challenges or informal practices that influence risk. API RP 580 highlights that without input from process and operations personnel, RBI assessments may rely on idealized assumptions that do not reflect real operating conditions. Their participation helps ensure that risk estimates are realistic and that inspection and mitigation plans are practical and implementable within the operating environment. Maintenance personnel and management play complementary roles in the RBI process, as outlined in API RP 580 sections 7.2.7 and 7.2.8. Maintenance personnel provide insight into equipment reliability, failure history, repair practices, and maintainability, all of which influence risk evaluations and mitigation strategies. Maintenance input helps identify recurring failure modes, repair effectiveness, and practical constraints on inspection and replacement activities. This information supports realistic planning and helps ensure that RBI recommendations can be executed effectively. Management is responsible for providing direction, resources, and oversight for the RBI program. This includes approving RBI methodologies, ensuring adequate staffing and training, and integrating RBI outcomes into broader asset integrity and business decision-making processes. Management support is critical for sustaining RBI over the long term. API RP 580 emphasizes that management engagement demonstrates commitment to risk-informed decision-making. When management actively supports RBI, it reinforces accountability, facilitates implementation of recommendations, and helps align inspection strategies with safety, environmental, and business objectives. API RP 580 sections 7.2.9 through July 2, 11 address additional specialized roles that contribute to consequence evaluation and decision-making within RBI. These include risk analysts, environmental and process safety personnel, and financial or business personnel. Risk analysts support the structured evaluation of likelihood and consequence, particularly in quantitative or semi-quantitative RBI studies. They ensure that models, data, and assumptions are applied consistently and that uncertainty is appropriately considered. Environmental and process safety personnel evaluate potential impacts of equipment failure on personnel safety, public health, and the environment. Their input ensures that consequence assessments reflect regulatory requirements, corporate standards, and societal expectations. Financial and business personnel provide insight into economic consequences, including repair costs, production losses, and business interruption. Their involvement helps ensure that RBI decisions balance risk reduction with cost effectiveness. Together, these roles help ensure that RBI outcomes support holistic, risk-informed decisions that consider safety, environmental, and business impacts, consistent with the intent of API RP 580. Section 7.3 of API RP 580 emphasizes that effective RBI application depends on appropriate training and qualifications for all personnel involved. Training requirements should be commensurate with an individual's role and level of responsibility within the RBI process. Risk assessment personnel, in particular, must be trained in RBI principles, methodologies, and applicable damage mechanisms. This includes understanding likelihood and consequence modeling, inspection effectiveness, and uncertainty management. Formal training, combined with practical experience, is essential for producing credible RBI results. Other team members must also have sufficient awareness of RBI concepts to effectively contribute their expertise. For example, operations and maintenance personnel should understand how their input influences risk rankings and inspection plans. API RP 580 encourages organizations to define competency requirements, provide ongoing training, and periodically assess qualifications. This ensures that RBI teams remain capable as methodologies evolve and operating conditions change. Training and qualification are not one-time activities, but ongoing commitments to maintaining RBI effectiveness. Section 7.4 of API RP 580 summarizes the keys for success related to roles, responsibilities, training, and qualifications in an RBI program. At the core is the need for clear definition of roles and accountability, ensuring that all necessary competencies are represented and effectively utilized. Effective communication and collaboration among team members are critical. Structured discussions, transparent documentation, and constructive challenge of assumptions improve the quality and credibility of RBI outcomes. Competency management is another key success factor. Organizations must ensure that personnel are properly trained, qualified, and experienced for their assigned roles, and that competencies are maintained over time through continuous learning. Finally, strong leadership and management support underpin all other elements. When management actively supports RBI, provides resources, and integrates RBI results into decision-making, the program is more likely to deliver sustained improvements in safety, reliability, and cost-effectiveness. These keys collectively ensure that RBI is not just a technical exercise, but a robust, people-driven risk management process.